I bet there's some people listening to this who are like, oh wow, my research question is going to be so much better able to be answered at this facility. So let's say you're an early career faculty and you're listening to this, go, wow, I can't wait to use niche. What kinds of experiments will this enable, and what are some of the breakthroughs that might be possible that you're really excited about?
Yeah, I mean, for example, I already told you, like, the niche will have an ability to, let's say, test full-scale residential structures to failure. So we can conduct, like, full-scale cladding and envelope test, as well as what are the impacts of wind and water on them. Testing to failure is very important to understand the joint mix of impacts of wind and rain, debris, wave, and surge on buildings and critical infrastructure, so that we can improve their design and also validate realistic and economic retrofitting measures. Niche will simulate like full scale or near full scale test for sediment transport of all types, including dune erosion, profile building, foundation scour, wave transformation, and near shore hydrodynamics. We can investigate the effects with and without vegetation, and real vegetation, not something made out of plastic.
Mm-hmm.
Full scale or near full scale natural and nature based features can be also tested in niche. For example, we can conduct full scale or near full scale tests on coastal structures, breakwaters, seawalls, flood barriers, etc.
Wow.
These tests can evaluate the structural performance of the systems, as well as things like overtopping and runoff. There are three key research areas that we envision for niche to address. Each of these will answer key research questions, as you mentioned. So research area one is community hazard modeling and resilience under combined hazards. And the research questions that will be answered, let's say, under this is: what are the individual and combined impacts of single and co-occurring hazards of wind, surge, wave, sea spray, and flooding on coastal structures? And what new strategies can build resilience in these vulnerable areas and enhance public safety by reducing wind water impacts on buildings and critical infrastructure? The second research area is coastal processes modeling and adaptation under interacting hazards. So the questions that we can answer is: what are the most efficient nature-based and bio-inspired solutions like live mangroves, dune vegetation, salt marshes, coral reefs that can reduce storm surge and wave impacts? Um, how do various gray solutions, for example, seawalls, levees, flood protection systems, perform in protecting natural and built environment, and how can they be hybridized? That means combined with the
Mm.
bio-inspired solutions, and maybe work together for protection. Also, what are the impacts of these combined wind, surge, wave actions on sediment transport, erosions, near shore and onshore morphodynamics and geomechanics? These are very important questions from the coastal engineers. Um, then the research area three is very important. Okay, preparing for tomorrow,
Mm.
adaptation for a changing climate, right? So you have seen like people are already talking about papers coming out about Cat 6 because wind speeds are increasing. So how should Cat 5 plus storms with wind speeds in that range of 190 to 200 miles per hour be simulated as they become probably our new normal?
Which is
Then
really frightening to think about, that's not just science fiction anymore.
no, it's not. I mean, we have seen rapid intensification. Hurricanes just can go from nothing to everything. One of our research team members in Wolofin said that for Milton, when it kind of almost went to a very high category storm from nothing, right? So we can answer questions of what would be the impacts of escalating hazards on communities and coastal ecosystems and critical infrastructure, and what disruptions are affected in the future because of all this intensification. Then comes the strategies. So what strategies can allow stakeholders to experience, real life in the facility and with computational simulations, these climate futures, so they can make informed decisions on climate adaptation policies and observe the effectiveness of these new adaptive infrastructure policies firsthand at the facility. And then also another important area connected to sustainability is what potential advancement can we make in renewable energy systems and carbon neutral materials. So we are going to look at like offshore structures, offshore wind turbines, and other kind of structures that are important for renewable energy. Yesterday, I was talking to a gentleman who is a retired person from the Army Corps and the ONR. They think that niche can also be useful for their ship research, because right now they test their ships in water, but also how the wind, crosswinds impact ships
Oh yeah.
and cause instability. So this new thing came in mind that ship aerodynamics and hydrodynamics can be also something that people might get interested once
Yeah,
the
I mean, because even the
capabilities will be.
largest, naval facilities like Carter Rock, they just do waves. They don't have
Exactly.
the wind component in there. You could
Yeah.
even, see shipping companies, these large container ships, that have had catastrophic economic impact when they encounter these large sea states in the middle of the Pacific. Could do some very interesting testing of scale ships, or um, in that regard. That would be really interesting.
No, absolutely. And so every day we are seeing more and more applications and more practical applications that niche can be applied to. So, I mean, we should focus mainly on the versatility of the facility, not just the power and the size and the hazard intensities, but the versatility of the facility of doing all of these. Now, of course, we have to keep in mind that we cannot cover everything under the world, but as long as we can cover maybe 90 to 95% of the problems that we are facing, we are good enough, because that will strike a good balance between the capability and the cost of the facility. We
Right.
don't want the cost also to skyrocket. So we have to strike a balance and say, like, okay, we niche is able to solve maybe 90 to 95% of the problem, and the other 5% probably is not right now our focus. So that way we can strike an economic balance of the initial cost and the operations.
Yeah, and one of the, I mean, aside from the main, more fundamental research questions, it's important to highlight how you are building into the design of the facility, and how you talk about it with potential researchers, bringing in stakeholders and helping them to make informed decisions. With, you talked about a very large observation area and things like that. Um, you know, just as important about the science, and a lot of what we've learned coming through NERI is building those relationships with the people who are going to write the policy and implement the policy, and execute on the building plans and retrofits and things like that, both from the kind of political stakeholder point of view, but also the practical applications of structural engineers and city planners and all sorts of things. So that's a really great thing that you're incorporating, as well as the technical flexibility is also kind of the more social aspect of this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the convergence part of this research has some, we call them non-physical components. So we have three objectives. One is research capacity development that focuses on the convergence of experimental, computational, and field data. Then we also have workforce development and stakeholder engagement. So there have been already many interviews that our lead on the stakeholder engagement, Christine, has done, talking to several people from academia, from industry, from other agencies to understand their need, their perspective of the capabilities that we will be having. Also, we are having workshops in which we are engaging the community from all the walks of life, like industry, government agencies, academia, and we are getting input from them regularly. And we are documenting those inputs from the entire community so that they are aware and they inform the design, not they come as an afterthought, but they inform the design now, and we are carefully noting their comments and incorporating as best as we can in the facility. And then there is this workforce development programs that is going on as well. So our partners like John Van der Lent, Tracy Kuczewski, and then Christine um, uh, Taylor, they are making this convergence effort by bringing the community together to inform the design from day one, and not wait. So what you just mentioned is already being taken care of by engaging them at an early stage and getting their input to the facility. We also have a advisory board with very eminent researchers and other professionals who are advising us on the design progress. And we have a technical review committee, we call it TRC, with experts from wind and wave facilities who have designed and run on a regular basis these kind of facilities. They are looking at the technical details of the design. So these two separate facilities are informing, again, the science, how to answer these research questions, how they tie up with the capabilities that we are thinking, and then how technically feasible these things are. So we are kind of covering those aspects as well.
Oh yeah, it's really amazing to see this come together. You've got a few years left on the design. So how can people follow along or maybe participate in some of those workshops that you have upcoming if there are some researchers listening?
Yes, so we already had like 3 workshops, and then there is an upcoming workshop on November 1. So if people listening to the podcast, they want to join, they can either email me or Dr. John van der Linde from CSU, and we can include them. We are sharing some of these things through also emails and invitations. But anyone listening to this podcast and want to join the November 1 workshop is more than welcome. And please send me an email or Dr. John van der Linde, and we'll make sure that they can participate.
Fantastic. Anything else you want to share before we wrap up for today? This has been, I mean, as always, really fascinating to talk with you. Every time we get to chat, it's just amazing me what you guys are working on.
Yeah, I know. I want to just acknowledge the effort of all the team members, of the faculty, the students, the postdoctoral researchers, the consultants, the project management staff, and all the people who are managing this project. They're putting an amazing efforts. And I'd also like to thank Dr. Joy Poshki and NSF for their support. Without NSF support and without the direction of Dr. Poshki, I mean, this wouldn't have been possible. So that's a great support that we are getting, and also for people like you and Marty, who are trying to promote and give this news to the entire world, like, hey, there is a facility of this size and this capability coming up. So disseminating this information, we thank you and Marty and other people who are kind of doing these kind of events like the podcast and the story on the niche. These are very helpful in spreading the news so we can get like a more worldwide coverage of what we are doing. So I'd like to thank all of you for your support and helping us to make niche what it is supposed to be and how it's going to make this world a better place to live.
Yeah, thank you so much, and glad to play a small part in this. And offline on the NCO side of things, we'll have to see if there's any way that we can support even further as you guys get into development and hopefully the next stage of the MREFC process, and just make every effort to have this facility be, as you mentioned, a way to make our world a more resilient and safer place for us all, especially those in wind affected and water hazard affected areas. So thanks again for your time, and looking forward to seeing where things go with niche.
Absolutely, and I acknowledge your effort and the effort from all the heavy like the NCO and everyone to disseminate this information, and also the FIU for supporting this. FIU is making a huge investment in addition to the grant, and we are all headed to a positive direction. So hopefully we are going to be very successful and make this thing happen. So thank you, Dan.
Yeah, cheers, Arindam. Have a great day.
Thanks.